Good afternoon, scholars. It is 4:06 p.m. on Monday, November 15th. This is yet another opportunity to engage with Dr. Sean Walker and learn from his insights and perspective as you are preparing for life after college. You know, what are some things that you can get involved in now as a student that you can prepare for your career aspirations. So I will not belabor in the moment, and I'll pass the mic over to Dr. Walker.
All right. I'm Sean Walker. I'm the Associate Dean of Natural Sciences and Mathematics. And today, if I'm remembering our questions, it's all about graduate school and how to sort of pick a grad school and what to ask people and that sort of thing. Am I remembering?
Yeah,
right?
Anything really relative to career development or career preparation,
Okay.
professional development.
Okay. And Jasmine, feel free to ask any questions you want. We did it really informally last time, and I think it was okay. And you know, there may be stuff you want to know that's not on the list of things that Melissa and Dimitri put together. So I went to undergrad. I went to community college first, and then I went to get my bachelor's degree at another institution in my hometown. So Tyler Junior College and the University of Texas at Tyler. And I was a chemistry major. And it's a funny story because I was told I couldn't be a biology major because I had to be pre-med or pre-dent, and I had no desire to be a dentist or be a doctor. So I was chemist instead. What's your major, Jasmine? Math? Awesome. Okay. And the other part of the story that I talked about the last time was that part of being a chemistry major that really helped me was actually all the extra math I took. So I think if I actually knew what you could do as a mathematician, I might actually would go back maybe and be a mathematician or a statistician. Because math is just cool and amazing. You can do so many, both, you know, these questions just to sort of figure something out, and these questions that just have these profound implications for how we view the world, right? It's great, you know, and you never know when you're going to find something out that you think has no application to anything, and then suddenly somebody's like, "Oh wait, we can do this with it." And so it's just really, math is cool. Math is very cool. And then when I started the idea I wanted to go to graduate school, I want to say I was like the second semester of my junior year, or maybe even part of my senior year, when I really decided I was going to go. And the first thing I did was I went and asked my research mentor, a guy named Dr. Neil Ford, and I said, "Well, can I just stay here?" And this is really funny because this really, really hurt me, but it was really good advice. He's like, "No." He said, "Just no." And I'm like, "What? You mean I got to go find some other group of people to get along with and learn things and all that stuff? I don't want to do that." And then he said, "No, but here's some ideas. So go talk to these people." And so, you know, I think one of the best pieces of advice is to make sure you talk to lots of people and get lots of advice, and ask lots of questions. If someone tells you doesn't make sense, tell them, "Listen, I don't understand. Why do you think that's a good idea?" And Dr. Ford kind of told me why he didn't think it was a good idea, but I didn't want to believe that because I didn't want to have to move from like home and all that other sort of stuff. It's a pretty sweet deal, at least, you know, when I was an undergraduate, to be able to live at home, and I paid for books or tuition. My parents and I had this deal, so I had this really sweet setup, right? So to have to leave and then have to pay for rent and everything, it's like, oh, but if I stay, and then I applied to a couple of places, and I got into a place called Miami University. Anybody know where that is? In Ohio. My family thought I was in Florida. or at least my grandmother did, and kept wondering why it would snow. And that was one of the, I mean, it's just like profound moments of change in my life, for a whole slew of both personal and professional reasons. I started out in a field doing behavioral toxicology because I was a chemist, so I wanted to keep doing some of that and do some of the biology stuff that I worked on in Dr. Ford's lab. And so I mixed them together, and I decided, well, I didn't like that very much, so I'm just going to go do behavior stuff. And I met my PhD advisor there. So all sorts of cool things happened by taking this chance. And I learned a whole bunch of new things, which is why the advice that Neil gave me, which was hurtful at first, like, wait, you don't want me to stay, actually was really good. Because I got out of my comfort zone, I went somewhere else, and I learned a whole bunch of stuff. And at that point, I was doing my master's, and I would say I didn't have a very good idea of what to do, like how to pick a school, how to do anything. I basically was asking other people, like, what do you do? And I applied to, like, I think 2 places. I would say now I was lucky that I got it. And I was lucky that I got into a place and worked with people that it was a good situation. And my advisor there was actually Dr. Ford's dissertation advisor, and gave me a lot of freedom to do a lot of things I wanted. But it was also irritating, and I didn't realize this when I came there. This is something I learned, was he was like super duper hands-off. Like I might even miss meetings with you because I'm going to forget. And that really frustrated me, because it makes you feel like you're not very important when people do stuff like that. And so I learned a lot and was very independent and became very good friends. We still hang out on Facebook with a bunch of people from there. When I did my master's, just learned a whole slew of things about being sort of a self-sufficient human being and doing science research and figuring stuff out. And that was really, really good for me. When I figured out how to sort of do it right, I actually was when I applied to my PhD. And then I had met Dr. Ripstra. So Ann Ripstra she's amazing. There's a long history of women being involved in arachnology and studying spiders and stuff. And she was one of the folks who sort of pioneered that. And now when you look at that field and you look at animal behavior, you see lots of women involved. It's not, you don't necessarily think of being in the field or in the tropics as something that, especially in the 70s, you would see a woman biologist doing. And so she was one of the folks who did a bunch of that stuff, and also gave very frank advice and was a really good friend, in addition to being a wonderful mentor. And that was, I would say, parts of that happened before I even applied to be in her laboratory, because I did sort of a project with one of her postdocs, because we had some video tracking thing in the lab I worked in, and so we worked on something, and it was really great. But from Sam Marshall, who was the postdoc, and from her, it was like, oh, well, if you're going to apply to a PhD, you need to go talk to people. You should go talk to their students. You should go talk to them to find out how are they going to help you do the things that you're going to do. And I was like, whoa, never thought of all that. That makes sense. And I think the journey for grad school can be really different depending on if you're doing a graduate program where it's the credential that you're going for. So like an MBA, right? You're just going for a credential. You have a bunch of classwork. There may be a project involved, there may not, but it's probably not working one-on-one with a faculty member. If you're doing a sort of thesis-based master's degree program or PhD program, and while this sounds like I'm trying to be funny, I'm actually just trying to impress upon how important relationships are, right? The average length of somebody being in a PhD program working with their advisor is longer than the average marriage, right? It can be like between 4 and 6 years, right? So this is someone you're going to spend an immense amount of time with, right? Working back and forth, writing, doing all sorts of stuff. So it is completely in your best interest to think of it like trying to find a job, right? Because that's going to be your boss, right? And mentor. And if you meet with them and you're like, no, I don't like the way that you do things, you should say no. Because even if that means sitting out another year or something like that, that's way better than like 4 years of being completely miserable working for someone that you don't get along with or runs things in a way that you wouldn't appreciate. I got used to being left alone and doing my own thing. One of the folks I interviewed with did not run their lab that way. They were in fact like breathing down the neck of their students. And, you know, I'm still friends with that person to this day. But there is no way I could ever have been a graduate student in that lab. I would have had a meltdown. Just because it's like leave me alone, let me think. Don't get in my face. I don't need that. And so I was lucky I sort of figured that out. And I'm sitting here rambling on. What do you want?
Well, for now, I've been thinking of doing a master's program. Because I'm still not sure. I want to enter the education field. But I'm still deciding if I want to just do like high school or like a community college.
Okay. Okay, so definitely something teaching.
Yeah.
Okay. And whether you do it immediately or not, there's going to be post-grad work involved. Because if you would do high school, you'll do credential, right? And most people, I should say most people, lots of folks that I know do that, and then they go back and they get a master's later because it gives them a very, very, very nice raise. Well, and it opens the door for other things, for like administrative credentials, or if they wanted to change from teaching high school to, like you said, teaching community college. And so I think, you know, I had a math teacher that changed my life when I was an undergraduate. And if I had had a math teacher like Evelyn Brandel the whole time I was an undergraduate, there is no way I would be a scientist. Well, mathematicians are still scientists, but I'd be a mathematician now. It changed my life. So we need folks who want to teach and enjoy that, and to go, you know, have folks learn math from folks who are like, this is cool. You know, my Calc 2 class was get everything right, and there is no partial credit. And I'm going to test you more on the algebra, because the calculus, the integration and the derivative stuff wasn't hard. The algebra that was part of the problems that were on exams and on homework was actually just extraordinarily more difficult than any of the calculus. So the class wasn't asking me about calculus, it was asking me about algebra. And when I moved from that and took the differential equations class with Dr. Granville, that was when it was like this class is about math, but it's about doing things with math. And it was just so amazing. But I think, you know, in looking for master's programs and credentials, I would say find out the requirements that they're going to have for you to get in, admissions requirements, all of that. Talk to them about the placement of where their folks go when they finish. Both, whether it's a master's program or you're talking about a credential program, because I think I don't know how true this is, and I haven't looked into it for for many programs. I know our program here, the folks here do a really good job both in the math department and in the was it Department of the College of Education. They all do a really good job. But the math department is awesome. For folks doing high school who need a math degree, right, and then go and do their credentialing. But if you were to go other places, you want to find out where people go and where people go to do their student teaching and all those sorts of things, to think about how that fits in with where you want to be. I think it would be, and I have no experience with this, so I'm just guessing from like my own experiences. I went to Miami. Miami is a Midwestern institution. I came from Texas, okay, and in Texas, it was not and I lived in a place that was not it was majority white, but it was not by a whole lot, right? So there were Hispanic folks. We had actually, that was surprisingly a fairly large population of Chinese folks in the 90s, which was odd at the time, but it had occurred, and a substantial African American population. And I grew up with all these folks, right? And I went to graduate school in a place, and this is something that I didn't figure out till I got there, that was all white. And it's funny because I'm a white male. You think that would make me feel comfortable. It actually didn't, because it was so weird. And so checking into where you want to go and where you might do your teaching, right? If your student teaching would be in some school district that would be really weird and uncomfortable for you to be in, that might not be the best place for you to grow and develop as a teacher. Right. On the other hand, if you're looking for something super duper challenging and you want to get out of your comfort zone, right, you can choose that path by how you pick what you do. I think that's one of the things that, like for my master's degree, I was just trying to get in and go somewhere and move out of Texas, basically. So I moved from my diverse hometown that I didn't want to be into the really white place that was here. I remember calling does this sound strange to you, Dimitri? I called my parents and I said, there are no people of color here.
No, so I also did my master's in Ohio, Bowling Green State University, a little further north. Yeah, it's a different world. I mean, not all of Ohio is so massively white like that, but when you're in these smaller, really rural areas, that's what a lot of the experience was. And I had a similar experience not in Ohio for grad school, but my first time going to, where was it? I think it was my first time going to Atlanta, being in such a predominantly Black area, because I also grew up in an area where it's fairly diverse, and being in a space where it was all people who looked like me, honestly, made me a little uncomfortable. So ultimately, there's pros and cons and benefits to whatever type of environment you might step in, and how that teaches you to navigate the difference, right? And so ultimately, when it comes to navigating graduate programs or credential programs or even employment opportunities, right? Taking all of that into consideration to think about, okay, what type of environment am I stepping into? What factors do I need to consider for the work that I'm going to be doing, but also for my well-being, right? Because if like I always say this, if you don't make sure that you are well, none of the things you need to do will be done well, right? And so there's a lot of different factors, but I mean, I can share some of my grad school search process as well. But going through the interviews, like Sean is sharing, like going through this interview process and asking questions, having them ask really, I think the most valuable piece in any graduate program or credential program search is engaging with the students in the program. And that's what helped me make my grad school decision, was engaging with the students at one institution. It felt very pompous, like you want to be here, you know. And by all means, it's probably one of the top tier programs in the field, but I felt like a number being there. And I have friends who were part of that program, had a phenomenal experience, but it just wasn't the right fit for me. The program I decided to attend, I had an opportunity to engage with the current students in a meaningful way, that helped me see what type of experience I could have beyond just coming and visiting the campus or talking with the faculty. And we had some real conversations that, you know, some behind the scenes, like, this is what our life is like, this is what the experience is like. And those are insights that are invaluable. So in any case, right, when I was considering becoming a high school guidance counselor, I went and talked with my old high school guidance counselor to get some insights. What does that look like? What is your experience like? She was able to share some of her perspective. Ask me, like, why is it I'm interested in that field? And I shared that with her, and she was able to provide some guidance saying, well, you know, considering the types of relationships you're looking to build with your students, you may not have that opportunity in the guidance counseling role, because we have such large caseloads that, you know, most times students are in and out, and we don't really have that time to build the relationship and cultivate it over the time while they're in school. And so having those conversations are going to be vital to making whatever decisions you make with your pathway.
Yeah, eyes wide open. You want to help yourself be not just focused on the prize of getting the degree, but focused on how you as a person can also grow as you go through this experience. Because I feel like that was I figured that out after I got to Miami, because I stayed there for my PhD. I applied to Bowling Green, but I didn't go. I like the campus, though. It's really nice. And I think if you have the opportunity to think about that and how the program, whatever program you're doing, can dovetail with both your personal, professional, right, goals, that's kind of the best way to choose. Now, and I know that sounds probably, I don't know, if somebody had said that to my 20-year-old self or my 19, I don't know how I would have responded. But I feel like thinking about how that works with who you want to be and where you want to go is just really important. And I like to say I stumbled through my graduate education and it just worked out okay. And I wouldn't advise it necessarily at this point in time as the best way. It was a different time. I graduated high school in 1990, and I finished my PhD and all that stuff in like 2001 or something like that. So it was even, you know, it's only 2021. It hasn't been that long, really. It was a totally different time. It was pre 9/11. It was, you know, and I think there was also a lot fewer people getting master's degrees and PhDs than there are now. I think a lot of folks do. And I think that has taken away some of the personal touches of the programs to a little bit about what you mentioned, right? And sometimes if you're in a really big program, it does look like you just have like a name tag with a number on it, and I just show up and I do stuff. Yeah. So what makes you excited about that?
Well, I really like the fact that you can apply it to almost anything. Like you can figure out some things. And in chemistry, like you can do carbon dating. So many different things with just math. And I just think the way in which it works is really interesting.
year are you? I heard that.
Third year.
Third year, so you're a junior?
Yeah.
Right on, right on. That's when you get to all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
I think job-wise, it's interesting because it's just a similar process, right? You would want to talk to the employer, think about what does this company do? Does this company do things I don't like? And it's interesting that I feel like one of the biggest things that's changed in my time is that the degree of social activism and interest in like an employer, like I'm not working for this group because they invest in fossil fuels, right? I don't want like that degree of social activism. I don't want to say didn't exist, but was very rare when I went to school and when I was working and getting a job. And now I think it's common. People will not take jobs. People will look at how their work-life balance will be. And this is something that is, again, both from an employer, like if you're trying to get a job, or if you're going to work like in a research group, right, with a group of students and you know the PI or the faculty member who runs the research group, then right, you want to know how that's going to work. Is that going to work for the way you want to live? And that's something that I believe that has also changed and for the better over the course of the time I think I've been here, not because of me, but because I think people have genuinely decided that working yourself to death is a very bad idea. And so that would be, that's one of the reasons it's important to like talk to, if you work in a research group, to talk to students, right? To talk to the students in the program to find out, are the requirements, reasonable? Are they doing things like in one semester asking you to do, so much stuff that you're not going to sleep for like 3 weeks to try and get everything done? I think that would be really rare. That's like med school. So, but I think it's just so important to do that. So if you had your ideal place in 10 years, where would you be?
Like location.
Career-wise. Well, location-wise, if you got a good idea.
I'm not sure.
I would have never predicted I would be in California. Ever, 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 ever.
I think location-wise, probably California. Just because I want to do education, and part of the reason why I want to do education is because growing up, especially in math, like none of my math teachers looked like me or was like, and so asking for help was intimidating. Like sometimes I struggled, but because I felt uncomfortable going up to a teacher, I would struggle on my own. So like location-wise, I think maybe California has more students of color, and part of my work is like I want students of color to have someone that they can look at, like have trust in, or like have that like for me to be approachable to them or accessible to them. I think that so like location was like I want to be in like an institution where it serves like people of color.
Right on. California would be a good place for that.
Yeah.
Credential. Did you ever think about PhD?
I had thought about it, but it's a bit scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So share a little more, like what's scary about it? Let's try and see if we can demystify that.
Well, just like the research, the concepts, math is interesting, but it's also sometimes the theory is kind of hard to grasp at times. And so that's what scares me. That I won't be able to understand it. Yeah. That's what scares me.
Mhm. So you said hard to understand. Is it, as you take your classes, do you feel like you're gaining more?
Yes. But there's times where it's hard. Like I'm not like struggling or well not I am struggling like math is hard to grasp. But I don't know, like I just have this I'm just scared for the to see because progressively it has gotten harder. And so I'm scared like if I look at these like what I'm learning and it's like scary right now, like I'm like PhD level, like it's even scarier. Um,
But as you've gone up, right, are there things that you thought, like when you first came here? Are there things like when you first came here that you thought, oh my God, that's super scary, and
Yeah.
now is it scary anymore?
yeah, it's not like calculus, I was really scared of. And then now that I look back, I'm like, oh, that was really easy. Like it's just like, yeah, and I think it has, yeah, I think it is like more of how you look at it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I know so I've gone all the way from undergrad, well, high school to now, and I've been a professor, a department chair, and associate dean. And I will tell you that there are days still that I walk in here and I feel like I do not belong and I have no idea what I'm doing. And I had, I think, a not the same, but a similar feeling when I started graduate school, and I was a chemist going to be in a zoology program, just biology, but just animals. And my experience was that the faculty, both that I had as an undergraduate and that I had in my graduate courses and that were on my committees and did all that stuff, was they helped me see connections that I wouldn't necessarily see. But I had to dig a little to sometimes get through that. And through that sort of digging and working through the problems, right, as you're talking about, I looked at calculus and it was really hard, I think, when I was in it, but when I moved on, I realized it wasn't, you know, nearly as scary as they thought it was. And I had kind of the same experience. And I think, and please weigh in. I feel like that's part of the coolest thing about graduate school is whether it's a PhD or a master's, you're going to get really challenged by things. And you're going to be done with them and go, whoa, I didn't realize I could do that. And I mean, that was my experience. And I've always been really lucky with my parents, who have always been super supportive of you do whatever you want to do as long as you can get a job and you don't have to live with us. They would totally let me live with them. It was an idle threat. But the idea was that, you know, you work on what you want to work on. You know, we're gonna you know, it's very privileged in that way that I had something I could always fall back on, but they always pushed me. And I think that fear is good because it makes you really think about what you do, but don't let it stop you. Because I, you know, there were definitely times, even, you know, as an undergraduate, I thought I was going to fail my dissertation defense, honestly, like the day before I was gonna have it. That was my wonderful advisor, Andrew Hipster, like talking me off the ledge of, no, you're good, defend your thesis. If you don't defend your thesis, you have people who are waiting for you to be their postdoc, and they're going to get really mad. So, you know, I think there's a lot of that, but the fear is natural, especially when you know, the content of mathematics, right? For me, I can talk about statistics intelligently, but if you try to make me talk about algebra or even calculus or differential equations or geometry, I couldn't do it. And that you learn those things as you go, and that journey of learning, that, you know, sort of the cup run over as you learn all that stuff, it will happen. And then it becomes for your decision about whether you decide to go on or not.
Yeah, so I was gonna add, you know, as far as that experience of, you know, I was first generation college student, first generation master's student, and it was really awesome to be able to have conversations after completing my master's about theory or whatever practical things with colleagues, and like, wow, I learned that in grad school. You know, have those light bulb moments of like, wow, I actually learned something, you know. So that will come without a doubt. And I think that's one other, are you first generation college student?
Yes.
So I think that's something to also think about. And for any other students who may watch the playback who are first gen college students, you know, your experience as a first gen college student continues into your profession, into your continued education, right? Because you're still the first in your generation to navigate these experiences, right? So Sean, I don't know, were you a first generation? Okay.
No, my dad is a pharmacist. So
Gotcha.
my mom graduated like 3 years before I did.
For sure. For sure.
To teach. She was a science teacher, fifth grade science teacher.
So understanding, right, like the fear that comes in not only pursuing higher education or professional education, really, right, but even stepping into your field, right? Like what are some suggestions or even pieces of advice you would have to share as students begin to navigate those experiences or prepare for those experiences?
Oh, that's interesting.
Because even like you mentioned, right, just even to this day, you walk into spaces and feel like you don't belong, even with the years of experience you've had, the roles that you've set in, right? You know, how do you navigate that, I guess, imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I don't know. I try not to think about it. I think one thing that I do now that I probably didn't do earlier in my life is I listen a lot more before I speak. I think earlier in my life, I would speak before listening. And that was, I think, my way of trying to prove I belonged there. Like I had something to contribute, right? That I don't want to say was a bad thing, but it also, you know, I like to be funny. I like to make jokes. I you know, right? You know, in a serious meeting, sometimes it's not good to make a joke. Having done that, you know, and so I think the thing I would do, especially after experiencing this, at least now what I do is I think I sort of will sit down and think, like just close my eyes and think about how things went and think about where I felt uncomfortable and what was making me uncomfortable. Was it that I really didn't know something, or was it that I felt intimidated because I felt like I was the person who knew the least in the room? was there really a reason for me to feel that way? Because was I there to be an expert on everything? And I think that's one of the questions that I think comes to my mind a lot when I talk about feeling like a pastor is a lot of what we do in higher education involves multiple disciplines and lots of people who do different things. Right, I feel comfortable saying that right, I am an expert on behavior in spiders and crickets and all, a bunch of vertebrates, right? No problem saying that. I know a lot about ecology, no problem saying that. I know a lot about sort of data analysis and things like that. Could I sit and talk to you for hours and hours and hours about theories of higher education and how we educate people and the systems and structures that we put in place? No. That's not my thing. And I think what I have to tell myself is, right, I'm there to contribute to that discussion from the lens of my experiences, and that my experiences add value to all of those discussions. And that's how I make myself feel a little bit, not like an outsider or someone who doesn't belong. But it's also made me want to listen more to other people, right? Because if what I'm saying, and I want people to value it from, here's the context of me telling you about my experience and my thoughts on this thing. If I want folks to listen to me, then I should listen to what they're saying, because it might be different than my opinion or my idea. But there's probably somewhere in the middle that as we talk through this, that we could all get together. There are some things that have never gone away for me. If I walk into a classroom, like, this feels pretty comfortable. There's three of us here, I feel good. Right? Have you had a class in a big classroom like McCarthy Hall 121, or right? You walk down to the bottom and you see students, and I'm terrified. It does not matter how many times I've done it. It does not matter. I'm terrified. And if you know me really well, you would realize it, because I start making all sorts of bad jokes. I start doing all sorts of things to try and make me feel like I belong. And I think everyone has to sort it out in their own way. And I think the short answer from my long-winded answer is I try and work it out so that I'm learning from the experiences of others and trying to give my unique perspective and trying to see the value in both what they're telling me and what I have to say. That was I don't know if that was really helpful or not.
That's good. I just want to add from my experience, when I was in grad school, right? I wouldn't say much in my classes initially, because when I did speak, no one would really respond. And when others would speak, others would chime in, oh, I was thinking that, this and that. And when I said things, it was like crickets. And so that made me feel like what I was saying was either not on par with what we were talking about, I was way off in left field somewhere or what, until one of my classmates came up to me and expressed how much they appreciated the value I added to the discussion and sharing a perspective that they hadn't thought about at all, right? And that reinforced for me, wow, okay, I am sharing valuable things, and just because folks aren't responding the way they're responding to others doesn't mean my voice is any less valuable, right? And perhaps it's because I'm sharing thoughts that no one else is thinking about, that when I do share, their gears are turning in a way that they're not able to verbally process what they're thinking through, right? And so Sean said it earlier, oftentimes when we're navigating these experiences, it's vital for us to recognize how are we perceiving the experience, because perception often becomes reality. And if we perceive that we don't belong, then we will believe we don't belong. If we perceive we're adding value, we're going to continue to add value, right? So that's my 2 cents that I would add for anyone navigating a new experience and feeling like, I don't belong, right? Just continue to learn from those opportunities, those experiences, and continue to share your voice, because you never know the impact of the things you're sharing until someone shares that with you, right? I mean, I could share many other stories of similar moments where, I felt like I was saying some BS, but it turned out to be a very valuable piece of insight, even I've gotten similar comments from some of my faculty. And so, oh, yeah, one last tidbit. I gotta share this because I think it connects to the experience of being a first gen college graduate, or coming out of your degree program and moving into the profession. I was looking at a position description for a role that, based on the title, I didn't think I qualified, right? And one of my faculty from my grad program asked me had I read the description. I was like, well, yeah. I said, well, what does this description say? Well, it says this, this, and this. Do you feel like you have that experience? Yes. It told me, don't build walls that don't exist, right? I had, based on what I perceived they were looking for this role, I already counted myself out when I clearly had the credentials. I clearly had the experience, the skills, the knowledge, the competence to step into that role and do that work effectively. But I counted myself out before I even give myself an opportunity to put my name in the hat, right? And so I think that's just another valuable piece of wisdom that I gained through that experience, of giving yourself the best opportunity to take advantage of opportunities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's bad hockey quotes, but Wayne Gretzky's dad allegedly said that 100% of the goals never scored were never shot. And you can do it with basketball, you can do it with football. But I think it's absolutely true. And if you put things in front of you that don't exist, that are going to stop you, yeah. And how far along are you in that? Finish 250B?
I'm taking that right now.
250B. So you take a 258.
Yeah.
250B, and you've done a couple of the other, what's the problem solving course?
I'm taking right now. I'm taking my 280, which is strategies of proof.
Yeah.
I've taken 335. No, 338. 338,
Okay.
which is
Stats.
statistical applications to the natural sciences. I've taken like the calculus courses. And, yeah.
Wow. So you made it further than I ever did. I think I've taken more statistics than you, but that's because I did it in graduate school. And so that also, one of the things that I always put in the back of my head, and it works when I'm doing things that, like if I'm talking about animal behavior, because I love animal behavior, like you're talking about, you love math. Probably in the same way I love talking about it. I could sit and do it for days. I think once I realized that even though I might feel uncomfortable, right, the amount of knowledge that I have just stuck up in my head is a lot more than lots of folks. And I think, for you've got a ton of experience in math that I'll speak for me. I won't speak for Dimitri because he's a math wizard. Trying to do, like 250B or 280 or strategy of proof. And so those courses are hard, and I know they really push you. But you should be really proud of it and reflect on the accomplishments going up to there, and you're getting through that now. And think both forward and backward, right? Of where I come from and where I am now, and think about that as a how far have I come, and if I can come this far, where else can I go? And whether that is inspiring, folks of color to do wonderful in your math class and to go on and do wonderful things, or doing the same thing at a community college, or having a PhD and ending up back here at Cal State Fullerton, and you're the dean, or a faculty member in the math department or something like that. All of that is on the table for you. And I think it's just so. Said this before. Don't let other people dictate where you end up, and don't let things that don't exist get in your way. And I don't know how to keep from doing that, because I think we're all very good at inventing really good reasons for why we can't do something. If we're scared of it, or if we're, I'm good at it. What other things can we help you with? Or do you want to know?
For sure. Well, and I guess in our last, Melissa said in the chat, really inspiring. So I guess in our last few minutes, Jasmine, if you could share, what would you say has been the most valuable piece of insight you gained today?
What you guys said about not letting my fear dictate or limit me, like, that was the most valuable piece of advice that I got. Because I had actually already kind of given up on going into the master's program because it was really scary to me. After hearing what you guys have to say about if other people can do it, why can't I?
Awesome. You'd be surprised at how much you really can accomplish. Honestly, you'd be surprised. And one thing I know from my experience, at least, is most of us. I'll say there's less than 1% of people who have things figured out.
It may be way less.
Yeah. There's a very, very fraction of a percentage of people who have it all figured out. And in those cases, because they have a profound amount of resources and connections, or things, structured for their success, so on and so forth, right? Opportunities that are prepared in advance. But the vast majority of people, especially those pursuing careers in teaching, helping professions, right? Credential programs, master's, doctoral programs. As Sean said, he kind of stumbled through it. To a degree, most people are, right? Because unless you're getting all 100% scores on every assignment, there are some stumbles. I think that's inevitable, right? Even the assignments I did get 100% on, they were still bleeding red with feedback, because there was always more to revise, or there was always more room to improve or enhance the work that I was doing, right? And trust, it was rare when I did get those 100% assignments. So yeah, if I could share any encouragement, it's become comfortable with that discomfort that comes with not doing things right? Because those are learning opportunities.
Yeah, someone said to me that I was my own worst enemy, and they were right about insecurities and all sorts of things. And I'm not saying be unrealistic about what you can do, but get out of your own way. Don't let the things in your head about, no, I can't do that. Don't let those sorts of thoughts and doubts get in your way. Because I feel like I think that's where lots of folks, if they were able to move those things out of the way, which is not an easy task, they would find themselves in a position where I think many of us are like, you can do this, go, 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 and just people doubt themselves. It's hard. Keep spotlighting me. It's scary.
Well, thank you, Sean. Thank you, Jasmine, for this engagement opportunity. For any of you who may be watching the playback, we hope that this has been valuable for you. And for those of you who are watching the playback, we'll have a link in the description for you to provide some feedback. Jasmine, you'll get a link via email. I'm sure Melissa will probably send it shortly. If not, we'll send it tomorrow. But thank you all. Have a lovely evening and enjoy the rest of your semester. We'll see you next time.